You've felt it before, that strange loneliness that appears even when someone's body is pressed against yours. It's not physical absence, it's absence of presence. It's the silence between two touching bodies whose souls remain miles apart, each one screaming into its own inner desert. And perhaps the cruelest part isn't the distance, but the illusion that you're being seen, loved, understood, when in truth, you're merely being used as a mirror for a desire the other doesn't even comprehend. Carl Jung left us an urgent warning, almost prophetic, about this. As long as we keep hidden what lives in the shadows of our psyche, we will keep projecting our unmet needs onto others, and call that blind impulse love. But it isn't love. It's hunger disguised as intimacy, and men, especially, have been trained since childhood to confuse these two. From boyhood, they're told that strength is silence, that vulnerability is weakness, that desire is conquest. No one ever taught them that desire can be sacred, but only when it rises from awareness, not emptiness. So they grow up chasing bodies, like remedies, hoping a single touch might erase the ache of not knowing who they are. And so the pattern repeats. They approach with fire in their eyes, hungry hands, sweet words, but what they truly want isn't the woman before them. They want what she symbolizes, a symbolic cure for an ancestral wound of incompleteness. Jung called this inner figure the anima, the archetype of the feminine within the masculine psyche. She isn't a real person. She's a living image inside the unconscious, bearer of emotion, intuition, beauty, mystery, embrace. When a man hasn't integrated his anima, when he's buried her for years beneath layers of logic, hardness, or performance, he projects her outward. And so every woman who stirs his desire becomes, unconsciously, an altar where he tries to worship what he lost within himself. But here lies the silent tragedy. He doesn't want to know her. He wants her to be what he needs. And when she inevitably reveals herself as human with her own shadows, needs, imperfections, the illusion shatters. Desire cools, connection fades. And he moves on, searching for another image, another body, another promise of wholeness, never realizing the problem was never out there. This dynamic isn't exclusive to men, of course. We all do it. We project our unresolved needs onto others and call it love, but there's something uniquely tragic in how culture has shaped masculine desire. It turned it into hunting, possession, consumption, and stole from it the simple capacity to be present, to be open, to be vulnerable. And it's precisely that vulnerability that unlocks true intimacy, because intimacy isn't fusion, it isn't losing yourself in the other. It's two whole beings aware of their own shadows, choosing to walk side by side without needing the other to fill what's missing. That's only possible when we stop using relationships as emotional anesthesia. Jung said, the greatest challenge of being human isn't finding the other, it's becoming who you truly are. This process, what he called individuation, demands extreme courage. Courage to face the parts of yourself you've denied. Courage to accept that wholeness doesn't come from outside. Courage to sit alone without fleeing into the next empty embrace. When a man or anyone finally does this inner work, something shifts radically in how they relate. Touch stops being an act of need and becomes an offering. The gaze stops seeking validation and begins expressing recognition. And sex, even sex, ceases to be a desperate attempt to fill the void, and becomes a ritual of communion between two beings already at peace with their own solitude. Because only those who know how to be alone can truly be with another. Only those who don't need the other to feel complete can love without demand. Only those who face their own shadows can see the other without projection. This isn't idealism, it's depth psychology. It's the path Jung offered not as theory, but as lived practice. And he knew few will have the courage to walk it, because it's easier to blame your partner, switch relationships, chase new bodies, than to sit in silence before your own inner mirror and ask, What am I trying to escape by seeking so much outside? But those who dare to ask that question, those who stop confusing desire with love, discover something revolutionary. That the deepest intimacy doesn't begin when you find someone else. It begins when you finally find yourself. And in that meeting, solitary, honest, transformative men and women arise who can love not from lack, but from fullness. Not from need, but from generosity. Not from projection, but from presence. And only there, only then, does touch stop being escape and become return. Return to the other. Return to oneself. Return to what was always there, waiting only for one moment of courage to finally be seen. As Jung said, with a simplicity that cuts through the soul, who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. Awaken, before another night ends with two bodies together and two souls still lost. Because awakening isn't a single moment, it's a daily choice. A choice to stop outsourcing your wholeness. A choice to sit with the discomfort of your own silence instead of numbing it with another's presence. A choice to look at the woman before you, not as a symbol, not as a savior, not as a fantasy, but as a fellow human being walking her own path through the dark. And in that gaze, clear, unprojected, humble, something sacred happens. Not passion, not obsession, but reverence. You see her pain, and it doesn't threaten your ego. You see her joy, and it doesn't trigger your envy. You see her truth, and you don't try to fix it, control it, or consume it. You simply witness it. And in that witnessing, love is born not as possession, but as participation in each other's becoming. This is the love Jung hinted at when he spoke of the conjunctio oppositorum, the sacred marriage of opposites. Not man and woman, but conscious and unconscious, light and shadow, masculine and feminine within each soul. Until that inner marriage is complete, every outer relationship will be an attempt to force unity where there is only fragmentation. So don't seek a partner to complete you. Seek the courage to complete yourself, not through perfection, but through integration. Welcome the parts of you that weep in the dark. Honor the rage you've buried. Embrace the tenderness you've called weakness. For it is in the reconciliation with your own depths that you become capable of true intimacy, not because you need someone, but because you have something real to offer. And if you do this, if you dare to descend, to integrate, to awaken, you may find that the woman who once seemed like a distant light was never outside you at all. She was the voice of your own soul, calling you home. So come home, not to her bed, but to your own being. There, in the quiet center of your existence, you'll discover what no touch could ever give you and what every true touch can now reflect. Wholeness. Not because you found the right person, but because you finally became one. And becoming whole is not the end, it's the beginning. Because once you stop seeking love as rescue, you become available for something far rarer, love as co-creation. Two people who have done their inner work, not perfectly, but honestly choosing, every day, to build something sacred in the space between them. Not out of need, but out of devotion to truth. This kind of love doesn't shout, it listens. It doesn't demand, it offers. It doesn't cling, it trusts. And it thrives not in grand gestures, but in the quiet moments. The shared silence over morning coffee, the hand held without words during grief, the mutual respect for each other's solitude. For true intimacy isn't measured in frequency of touch, but in depth of presence. Yet modern romance has forgotten this. We've been sold a story where love is fireworks, chemistry, destiny, as if real connection could be found in a glance, a swipe, a first kiss. But Jung knew better. He knew that lasting union is forged not in ecstasy, but in endurance. Not in projection, but in patience. Not in fantasy, but in the daily choice to see and stay with the real human being across from you. And that requires something our culture rarely cultivates: emotional maturity. The ability to hold your own pain without dumping it on another. The courage to speak your truth without blaming. The humility to apologize without vanishing. Maturity isn't sexy in movies, but it's the bedrock of every lasting bond. Without it, even the most passionate relationships become battlegrounds of unmet childhood needs. So ask yourself, are you relating from your wounds or from your wholeness? Are you trying to heal through someone or walking beside them as a healed man? There is no shame in the first, but there is no future in it either. Only repetition, only disappointment, only ghosts wearing human skin. But the healed man, the conscious man, he moves differently. He doesn't chase. He invites. He doesn't perform. He reveals. He doesn't fear a woman's power, he honors it, because he's no longer threatened by anything outside himself. His strength isn't in control, but in surrender to truth, to vulnerability, to the mystery of another soul. And in that surrender, he finds a deeper kind of power, the power of authentic presence. This is the masculine renaissance. Jung foresaw not a return to dominance, but an ascent into responsibility. Not the hero who slays dragons, but the sage who integrates his own shadow. Not the lover who takes, but the partner who gives freely, fully, without expectation. And when such a man meets a woman who has done her own descent, who knows her worth, her boundaries, her fire, something alchemical occurs. They don't complete each other. They reflect each other, and in that mirror, they see not what they lack, but what they've already become. So let go of the myth that love will save you. Love doesn't save. Love reveals. It shows you everything you've avoided in yourself, your fear of abandonment, your hunger for validation, your terror of being truly seen. And if you run from that revelation, you'll keep cycling through relationships like rooms in a haunted house, each one echoing the same unresolved pain. But if you stay, if you face the ghost, you discover it was never your enemy. It was your guide. Your longing wasn't for a person. It was for your own return, to integrity, to stillness, to self-respect, to the quiet certainty that you are enough, not because someone said so, but because you finally stopped asking the world to prove it. And in that certainty, you become a sanctuary not just for yourself, but for another. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. And reality, however imperfect, is the only ground on which true love can grow. So awaken, again and again, even when it hurts, even when it's lonely, even when the world offers you 1,000 distractions to avoid the one thing you must face, yourself. Because one day you'll look back and realize the greatest love story you ever lived was the one where you finally came home to you. If this resonated, if something inside you stirred, recognized, or sighed in relief, know this: you're not alone. So many are waking up to the same truth, walking the same quiet path back to themselves. And if you'd like to walk it with others who understand, who value depth over distraction, silence over noise, and soul over spectacle, consider joining this space. Subscribe not for more content, but for more truth, for reminders that healing isn't loud, that wholeness is possible, that you are already worthy of the love you seek, not because you've arrived, but because you've begun. And if you feel moved, leave a word below, not a comment for the algorithm, but a whisper to another soul. I'm here too, because sometimes that's all it takes to remind someone they're not lost, just returning. Thank you for being here, for listening, for staying. Now go gently and keep awakening.